In my research, I looked at how pre-adolescent children learn layered and situated racial, gendered, and other identities. Nukaga writes that these identities are not static. They change through diverse methods of intersectional experimentation over time. Identity is not created solely by personal choice, but through a dialect between internal agency and external structures. One major structure is that of peer interaction, as children observe and practice different identities with one another in situations from play to lunchtime to working in groups. Another of these structures, besides peer interaction, is, of course, the education system, situated as a service of our government for all children. Dr. Joyce King writes that, with current efforts to discredit CRT and remove the history of racial prejudice and oppression in schools, powerful societal interests seek to miseducate young people with biased or incomplete information. This effort is connected to broader cultural beliefs that education should be politically neutral, neutering the school as a place of civic and critical growth. Yet education and the school are innately political, and hiding information only assists in the creation of biased and uninformed individuals. Giraud argues that in the modern world, there is no way for whiteness to be invisible, with the proliferation of online media revealing the severity and prevalence of racist actions in the country today. Doll test studies, originally devised by Kenneth and Mamie Clark in the 1940s and reenacted as recently as 2017, show that the problem of racial prejudice is not improving. Despite nearly 80 years between the two experiments, the results remain the same, with children overwhelmingly choosing the lighter-skinned dolls as more valuable and treating darker-skinned dolls with disdain. Sturdivant writes that black children that identify less with their race do worse academically and feel the impact of racial discrimination more than those that have a positive racial identity. Studies show that African Americans in the U.S. have in many ways successfully reclaimed and redefined the concept of blackness, from a white-defined marker of inhumanness to a culturally knowledgeable and ethnically proud identity with which to withstand the prejudice and indignity of life in the U.S. I believe white children need to do the same with whiteness. Parents and teachers of white youth need to assist in reclaiming and redefining whiteness from a master narrative of superiority, privilege, and whitewashed history to an anti-racist identity. First, the child needs to be offered an unvarnished lesson in American and human history. Counter-narratives and perspectives should be introduced to temper master narratives of white male superiority and manifest destiny, and this should be a permanent persuasion, not tucked into a special month or a small box in a textbook, and not just left to the schools. Parents modeling racial awareness is crucial for white children to learn critical thought and devise practices to eliminate prejudice and ignorance in U.S. society. Goodley suggests that we should teach children that race is fundamentally a social, cultural, political, and psychosocial phenomenon, and thus imbue them with anti-prejudicial purpose. The alternative is continued centuries of anti-blackness and white ignorance. Identities are not created in a vacuum. They are created socially through experimentation. My research is leading me to devise creative social experiences, practices, and habits to educate children to critically resist foundational prejudicial identities.